Appamatto, pamattesu, suttesu, bahujāgaro, Abalassaṃva, sīghasso, hitvā, yāti, sumedhaso. Well, dear listener, I am going to break with the new Pali policy once again. I don't want to translate this in whole. I think it'll make more sense if we go through it and kind of bit by bit. It's not grammatically, syntactically difficult, but it's interesting. And what we will do when we go through this, you might by now have noticed that we have this va here. And this va is introducing a simile. And since similes in general are helping us understand, and specifically here, this simile is helping us to understand the rest of the verse, we're going to start with it. Now, keep in mind, this is a strategy I'm using because I'm speaking English and we're communicating in English. I've said, obviously, we could discuss this in many languages. I'm not fluent in Pali, so I can't just discuss this in Pali. So the point is, we'll start here with the simile, and then we will go on to the rest of the verse. In Pali, notice that the simile is here in the third clause, the third gata. It's not at the beginning or at the end. I would think, and you could try, if you're making a polished translation that is sort of even a work of art, you might keep it kind of embedded in the verse, but we are going for the meaning. We want to understand the meaning in as deep a way as possible. So if we look here at this clause, we have this va, this is just like, and we have this word, sīghasso. Now, it may not be real obvious at first that this is a compound, but it is. This word comes up a lot, or I should say it comes up a fair amount. It also comes up a lot in Pali primers, I think. Really, if these words were not run together as a compound, we would have sīgho, asso. And meaning that this type of compound is what's known as a kamadaria. It's just where this one word, in this case the first word, is modifying the last word. They would be in the exact same case. It's just an adjective noun situation. And asso is horse and sīgho is swift. Asso is, and both of them are in the masculine nominative singular. So, and we might go ahead here, just like a swift horse. Now, if we stay in the same clause here for just a minute, we won't, we might put it down and then I'll explain that. What we have here, Abalassaṃ, is an object. And we can kind of tell with this ung here. And also, notice we have assaṃ. So again, we have the same word. We have horse as an object. So this is our accusative singular. And I think just back here in verse 28, we were talking about bale. And I was saying that we don't want to confuse bale with this word bala. Bala means strong. Abalaṃ means weak. Just like a swift horse, there's going to be some verbs here that we're going to pick up in a minute. But we'll go ahead and write the object here, weak horse. And again, this would be abalaṃ. Let me get the Pali keyboard here. If those were separated, abalaṃ, assaṃva. So, just like a swift horse, something, a weak horse. We probably building up a picture already of some possibilities. We'll go here, if we scan through here, the only verbs we have are right here. We have hitvā and yāti. Hitvā is an absolutive form of the verb jahati, to leave, abandon, lose, give up, forsake. And this, again, in the last verse here, we had aruiha, which is an absolutive form. This va, and sometimes vana. Va, I think, is far and away the most common form of the absolutive we come across in Pali. And this one, really, you just have to memorize it, or you can put it in the Pali English Dictionary and let it search through the body of the text, and you'll get a hit, because it's not real obvious that it comes from jahati. So keep in mind, the absolutive means having done something. And then we have this other verb here, yāti, meaning to go, proceed. This really ties back to an Proto-Indo-European root like it or a, and that shows up like in the Greek word. We get a Greek word ion, which means to wonder, ion, and the Latin word exit. We use it as a noun, a way out, but in Latin it means he goes out. So anyway, that verb shows up in lots of different languages. Remember, just like in the last video, we were saying that the way Pali presents a sequence of actions or a sequence of verbs is only the last one will be in a, quote, finite form. In this case, it's in a present form, present act. This is third person singular, present active. It wouldn't have to be. It could be in the future. It could be aorist in the past. But here, it's present. And what that means is, in a very kind of wooden way, we could say, having gone out, then proceeds. But we could also say, we could keep in mind in English that really isn't how English presents a sequence of actions. We can have finite verbs in a chain. So we could say, just like a swift horse leaves behind and goes on, maybe even from, a weak horse. And that's a lot of words to kind of just get this image of a fast horse leaving behind a weaker horse. You might even think of the Kentucky Derby wasn't that long ago, something like that. So this is the simile, and it should help us understand the rest of the verse. One thing that we've come across a lot, especially if you go back even into the first vagga, the first chapter of the Dhammapada, similes often are sharing verbs with the other part of the verse. So we're going to have to repeat this. We're going to have to understand this verb, or actually explicitly repeat it, probably for the rest of the verse to make sense. So the way I would take this, just like a swift horse leaves behind, pulls ahead, kind of. Now we're going to go on to this su-medhaso, a very wise person. This breaks apart into su, and in Greek we get that as epsilon, ypsilon, we get it in words like euphemism, Eucharist, euthanasia, in which case it always means good or well. Same meaning here. Good, well, or just very, very wise. A very wise person. All these blue words in blue are masculine, nominative, singular. These three here, not the horse, all the other words in blue refer to the same person. They are in apposition. So we'll say then, the very wise person. Could be a very wise person. We don't know yet. And then we might pick up these other words. The very wise person. And we'll go back here. Appamatto, pamattesu. Appamatto, we've come across this quite a few times now in this chapter. The very wise person, careful. Careful. And then we have this word pamattesu. This is clearly the opposite of, or the base form of appamatto. Just like bala meant not strong. I didn't explicitly say that, or I might have. Appamatto is the opposite of pamatto. Here, though, sometimes what happens is this prefix will cause a doubling of the first consonant. And if like in the word anonymous, if the base word is starting with a vowel, then this will be it'll be A and N, pamattesu. So this ending here, if you've just done the Pali summer reading group, super simple introduction to the noun, you'll know that this is the locative plural. So this is talking about careless people, and so it's plural, and it's in the locative, meaning among. So the very wise person, careful, the careless, again, just like my typing, careful among the careless. And then we'll pick up this other description of the very wise person, bahujāgaro. And bahu you find a lot. It usually means like a lot of, something like that. Jāgaro means awake. So together, wide awake. Completely awake. We'll say wide awake. Maybe we'll put it on another line here. Oops, again. Wide awake among, and I'm jumping ahead a little, but notice here, this is the same structure, but it's, I think they call this a chiasma, where they've inverted. Here we start with nominative, go to locative, here locative, back to nominative. Suttesu, again, locative, masculine, locative, plural, among those who are asleep. Wide awake among the sleeping, maybe we can say. And then we'll come back to what is the wise person doing. It's just, or the wise person is doing just what the swift horse does. Goes ahead and actually I might just leave it here for a second. What does the very wise person do? Kind of, you hate to say abandon, but leaves behind, as in abandons the practices that keep one careless and keep one sleeping. I think that's the way to think about it. Obviously, in Buddhism, we're always striving to practice metta and karuna and mudita and upekkha, so that we're practicing loving kindness and compassion and sympathetic joy and equanimity / inclusiveness. So in English, we don't want to be misled by certain connotations of English words that, like abandon can mean something pretty negative. But that isn't the idea here, because the idea is, unlike a race, unlike a horse race, people like this who can go ahead, they can become the luminaries that we can look up to and follow. And that's a very beautiful thing. And it's actually quite humane for people to do that. So if we just leave the translation here, I wonder if you think that conveys the meaning. Just like a swift horse leaves behind and goes on from a weak horse, the wise person, and I'll add one thing here in a minute. The very wise person, careful among the careless, wide awake among the sleeping. Instead of repeating the verbs, we could add something that's not in the Pali. So too, the very wise person. And then I think that helps us understand that the action, helps us understand those actions there. So as always, I'm very interested to hear what you have to say, dear listener. And yes, I certainly would love to hear what you have to say regarding this, and especially regarding people who are vigilant and careful. It's very easy not to be vigilant and careful and wide awake.